Welcome in, everybody. Happy 4th of July. Make sure your burgers are well done. No, don't make sure they're well done. And make sure your firecrackers don't kill anybody. And do a Roman candle fire, too. Let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Ray's Rewind with Bell, Bushman, and Drew.
Jansen. That is into center field. Here comes Kiermaier. Phillips has tied the game. A Rose Arena coming around. Throw home. Now he stumbles. But the ball gets away. Tampa Bay wins it. Brett Phillips, game 4 hero.
The sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Rays Rewind podcast, the sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast on the Sick Media Network. Happy 4th of July, everyone. I'm the great L. Bushman, and always, as usual, is my co-host, Drew. Welcome in, everybody. You can find us on our YouTube page at the Sick Podcast Rays Rewind. Hit that subscribe and notification bell when new episodes drop. We have a great show for you today. We've got the Savali trade breakdown. We are going to have some more trade scenarios that the Rays could be pulling off as we get closer to the trade deadline. And we will break down the series finale of the Rays-Royals series today. But we want to start off with our mid-season grade. We hadn't done this yet, and Drew and I decided, hey, why not give our grades for the Rays for the mid-season and critique how the Rays have been doing up at this point in time. And, well, Drew, do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
Age before beauty, Evan.
Okay.
You go
so
first.
You're saying I'm old, and then okay, I got you.
Well, I'm 33, so I'm getting there.
All right. I thought I've been thinking long and hard about this, and I'm usually lenient when it comes to grades, and I'm like one of those teachers that they're trying so hard. Maybe I'll give them a grade that'll help them pass the
Grade
test.
on a curve.
Grade. I'll grade them on a curve. I'm gonna give the Rays up at this point into the season a C minus, and I say a C minus because the first half of the season was just frustrating, dreadful at times. Sometimes I wanted to punch my TV when I would see them play. The lack of hitting, the lack of fielding, just the overall, what are we doing here? Are we going to be out of the playoffs this year? What's even managerial missteps, like all kinds of things kind of rolled into one. But we also have seen signs of, hey, they can play well, they can field well, they can hit. We've seen this plenty of times. And then I think after the past couple of weeks into late June, and now we're in the July month, the Rays have really kind of stepped it up a little bit and started to play good baseball. So first half was dreadful, but now the second half is starting to pick up. So they're right in the middle of this grading scale for me. I can't give them a B minus just yet. I can't give them a B plus. I can't give them a D minus or a D plus because I don't think they've taken a step backwards. I think they're slowly taking the baby steps to go on that uphill battle to stay relevant in the playoff push. So right now I'm going to give them a C minus. And also too, and I think we talked about this on our show yesterday, that they're starting to realize, hey, we need to cut the fat that's not producing well, and we need to make the moves that are going to help us push us over the top and help us really, stay in the thick of the playoff race. So right now the Rays get a C minus from me. C minus.
Okay. Wow. For my grade, I'm staying in the C range because frankly, they don't deserve anything higher. Now, if we were grading by months, of course, I think your first 2 months are pretty much a D, right? And then this month of June is maybe like a B minus. So, it falls into that C range overall. So I'm going to go C. I'm going to be more positive on my grade, not by much. I think that, before the season started, we raised some questions about this team. I think a lot of the optimism for how this team could perform this year was just really, it was less about the players they had, or the actual like players on the field, and more about just the Rays track record of making things work. Now, obviously, they had established guys still coming back in the lineup, Yandy, Randy, hoping you're getting a season out of Brandon Lau, who am I forgetting? Josh Lowe, of course, obviously battling some injuries early on, but like you just kind of felt like they still had a good bullpen. They were just going to figure out a way. But if you really looked at the team, it was just, for you and I, Evan, as people who watch the Rays religiously, knowing that this team was coming in with a guy like Jonathan Aranda, again, partially due to injury, but slated to bat clean in their
Yeah.
opening lineup until he got the week of the season opener. It's just like, okay, how is this team going to necessarily be a playoff team when we're having to just trust that guys that have yet to prove anything in the majors are going to be valuable. It's almost like just because of the last guys left, we're yeah, it's going to be fine. And so for them to get off to a slow start and to really struggle, it wasn't that I was necessarily surprised. It just kind of felt like it was one of my fears about the season were being realized. So I wasn't shocked. I think if had I had more faith in this team coming into the season, I would be more along the lines of like in the D range, because I agree that they haven't met expectations, because I think a lot of people still thought they could still be a playoff team, and they still can be. I'm not saying they won't be at this point, because they have shown, I think, some really good progression in the last 3 weeks or so. But I think a C is, they're just average. I mean, they're honestly a little fortunate to be where they're at with the run differential. But the team's really, I think, they've looked a lot better in the last few weeks. I'm not going to ignore that. And they're
A C,
trending
a
in the right
C,
direction.
a C from both of us is right where they're at, like record wise too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're right around 500. I think they dropped they dropped back to 500 last night with the loss
Right.
to the Royals 4-2. So it's like fitting grades for a fitting record. And to your point about this team maybe going out to a slow start, I think with that is we all kind of, I think for the fans like you and me that study this team and talk about this team on the regular, it's like, okay, this isn't going to be the team like last year. This is a totally different team, a totally new look, where there's a lot of guys we've never seen before and we don't know how they are, and especially in like the catcher position, where we brought in Pinto to start the season as the number one guy, and now he's back in the minors, and we have Alex Jackson, who's terrible at the plate, and we've got Ben Rovette, who's he's good at times, and then our rotation and guys that we thought were going to have seasons like they did last year with Yandy Diaz and Randy Rosarena, and it was like, okay, what is the identity of this team? Because this is like a team that's just a bunch of misfit toys that aren't even playing well, and
missing a huge, I mean, again, missing Wander, who really just makes the whole thing go, and so there's a lot of questions, and I think a lot of them just got blown over because, the Rays, they just always make it work, and that's true. They've earned that reputation by, absolutely.
And if we always talked about this before, is if their first half is slow, and if their second half is where they really start to turn it on, then you can forgive the first half of the season. Now, if they stay mediocre throughout the rest of the season and miss the playoffs, then it's like, okay, it's a missed opportunity for this year. And then, okay, how are we going to look for next year? What kind of moves are they going to make in the offseason to make this team better? But of course, we don't know what's going to happen later on the trade before the trade deadline happens. I mean, we already had the Savali trade, but what other moves are we going to make to either be buyers or sellers? Because it's like every couple of weeks they trade. Hey, they're going to be buyers this week. Oh, we know what, they're losing. They're playing bad. They're going to be sellers at the point. And it's like it's a flip flop. And right now it's like it's a combination of, hey, they're going to be a combination of both buyers and sellers, which we saw yesterday with the Savali trade, which brings us into our really good transition is the Savali trade.
Smooth.
Yeah, smooth like butter. But it goes into that point is this was a necessary move. I mean, it's a guy that was underperforming, was making a lot of money. We've got a guy that's just kind of waiting around for a spot to open up for him, and it kind of worked out for the better. Where the Rays were just like, "Look, it's time. We got to make a move. We got a team interested. We're
Yeah.
we're selling low on this, but I think with the return that they got after looking at the tape on this kid and looking at what he's doing in single A, I think it was a win-win for both sides because the Brewers get a guy that can plug into the rotation because they need help in their rotation for pitching. The Rays get a guy they can lead down the minors. He can progress through there, maybe be trade bait later on in a couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a win-win. And then the Rays can plug in Shane Baz, who's ready to go in the rotation, who they've said he's already going to take Savali's spot. So it's like a win-win on both sides. Um, whatever trades that the Rays do later on in the next couple of weeks, we don't know.
Yeah. I think it really, if you just kind of try to put yourselves in the shoes of Eric Neander. So, I mean, realistically, I mean, we talk about this team all the time, and lots of ups and downs this year, more downs than ups. But they're still just hanging on to a playoff
Mhm.
spot. I think they're four. They've dropped back to four out.
4 games.
Yeah, 4 games out, whatever. Um, so if they're hanging around that 2 to 4 games out of the playoffs. So I mean, they're by no means out of it, just being in July. But I think realistically, and we've said too, like this team's going to buy. Could could be in a situation where they buy and sell. Kind of
Mhm.
do or if they just sell, it's going to be kind of a light sell. It's not, they're not going to fully tear it down. They're never going to be. I mean, unless they royally screw up over a course of a few seasons, like they're not going to ever just tear things down for the sake of tearing things down. So if you're Eric Neander, you're probably looking at this season as okay, we're good enough to still compete and hang in there, but there's a good chance that we also are not going to make the playoffs this year. There's a higher chance we won't make the playoffs than we will. So, and then next year with all the pitching injuries they've got coming back, you'll have Springs back, fully healthy after coming back this year. Shane Baz will be, full workload, hopefully. Have full spring training. Shane McClanahan, Drew Rasmussen, you got all these guys. So I would imagine, based on what we've read in the papers too, the quotes from the front office, that they expect to be big time contenders next year. Now,
Yeah.
no idea what the offense will do next year, but if they believe they're going to be contenders next year, and this year's kind of up in the air, anybody that isn't really, you know, going to be a contributor for next season that they feel like isn't really necessary to contribute next season, I think is viable to be traded this year. And Aaron Savali absolutely falls in that category. So it's no surprise that he was one of the pitchers to go. We talked about this yesterday, kind of in our quick breakdown, that, it's honestly kind of an addition by subtraction
Yeah.
and then an addition by addition because Savali's been arguably the worst pitcher on the staff this year, and he's got enough of a name recognition and a track record that he can still net you what seems to be a decent prospect. I know he's like 20 and it'll be 2026 before we see him, and that feels like an eternity away. But it's all reports. He's a great defender up the middle, and his bat's coming around, and so could be sky's the limit, so to speak, on that if it keeps improving. And you got it. So you got a decent prospect, and you take Savali out, who's been hurting you mostly, and then you bring in Shane Baz, who is probably as good, maybe better than Savali right now, and Shane Baz is absolutely somebody that is going to be a guy they rely on next year and in the year after. And so why not, take the opportunity to get him up here? And you knew
It's
that it had to be a trade. Like there's no one on the rotation that should be sent down in
right.
triple A or moved to the bullpen. So it's just,
It's
you
one of
know,
those low risk,
surplus.
high reward trades
Right.
because you're selling low on Savali to get this prospect back. I'm sure Savali's going to probably have a great time in the National League with the Brewers.
Hmm.
But looking in the long term, it's like, we've got look if Boz comes in and I don't expect Boz to be like an immediate like at the impact like Taj Bradley has,
Right.
or even Littell or Pepio. But if he's at least on the level better than Savali, then it's like it's a win-win.
Mhm.
Because Boz could turn into like where if Boz turns into where Bradley's at within the next few months or so, or obviously, look, it's going to be time to tell. If Boz comes in, he's decent, and then next year we see Boz at the level where Bradley's at this year,
Mhm.
then it's like okay, there was no. Then they knew what they were doing when they were giving away Savali, which
Right.
we every Rays fan was tired of Savali anyway, so it was just like when are they going to pull the trigger and some kind of move to like let him go, because everybody was just like you should have seen the Twitter comments yesterday when it happened. It was like, thank you, thank you, Rays,
Right.
bye, go to Milwaukee, pitch there. Look, we have nothing against Savali, but when it came to being a pitcher in our rotation, it was dude, we can't trust you. So
Yeah.
everybody was kind of on Twitter was happy with this trade. I know a lot of people were just kind of like, well, what are we getting back? And some people that weren't in the baseball realm were like, oh, the Rays got fleeced. It's like, no, they
Yeah.
didn't. No, they
Yeah.
didn't.
And I mean, if Shane Boz comes out on Friday, now, of course, it's against the Rangers, and the Rays don't play well against the Rangers, don't play well in Texas. So we'll see. But actually, I think, yeah, Shane Boz is from Houston. So
Oh, is he?
maybe we'll get a little. I know it's not. I know Houston and Arlington, or whatever the Rangers' new stadium is not exactly the
He's
same
going
place. But
against Michael Lorenzen on
yeah,
tomorrow's game.
so maybe we'll get a home state bump from Shane Boz. But
I like the matchups that we have for the
yeah, oh
Texas
well,
series.
yeah, we lucked out. I mean, Evaldi, I think, is Sunday, which is always he.
But
We,
Texas hasn't been playing well,
yeah,
and we got
no,
Boz going against Lorenzen. Taj is going
Haney.
against them on Saturday against Haney, and then we got Zach, against Evaldi.
Yeah,
So I like it. I like the
if
pitching matchup.
if Boz comes out on Friday and pitches well, Rays win. He pitches
Mhm.
really well. It's going to feel a lot different. The pitching
How
staff
far
can
do you
feel.
think he's going to go on Friday? 4 or 5?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think if they can get 5 out of him, they'll be
Mhm.
happy. I think it also depends on, today, like what the bullpen
Yeah.
does today. If they have to use their guys, their main guys today, I think the bullpen covers a lot of innings today. It's going to be, I think they might lean on Shane a little bit more. But again, I never know what they do. Like, it seems like when the pitchers pitch well, that's when they get taken out. and then if they're like average to below average, they're like, yeah, you finished
Well, it was
out.
like the other day with Pepio, where he was rolling. He only gave up like one hit, and Cash
Let's
comes in and
see.
pulls him.
I mean,
That was against. I think that was the series before this one.
yeah, his last couple outings, he went in the month of June. Excuse me. He went four innings, 5 innings, 6 innings, 3 innings, 5 innings. So I don't see the pitch counts on here, so I'm not. It doesn't have it, but so yeah. I mean, I think if they can get 5 innings out of him, I think that would be a win for them. But the rotation is just going to look a lot different. It's going to have
Yeah.
a different feel to it if he comes out and looks good, especially
Mhm.
against a good, Rangers. I know they haven't played well, but like they still have a lot of good names in that lineup. So, um, I because up until now, I mean, it's been, you can it's been a mixed bag with the rotation. You had the most confidence. I know Pepio pitched poorly yesterday, but you get Eflin, Pepio, Bradley. Now you kind of feel a lot more confident now when his name's on the as a starting pitcher. And Littell's kind of been up and down as well, but like Savale was always that one you were just like kind of squeezing the cheeks a little bit, like hoping he just gets through 4 or 5 without imploding. So if Boz can come in and make a really strong start, I think
Well,
it
I'm
just makes you
hoping.
feel more confident in the rotation as a whole, going into the All-Star break, and then you add Springs in, and I mean, I know. Listen, Springs coming back around the All-Star break or a little bit after. I mean, it's going to be the exact same situation. Someone's going to go.
Great segue into trade scenarios.
Yeah.
All right,
go.
we've got some trade scenarios put out yesterday by Fansided. No way. I'm not a big.
Not the authority on Rays
Yeah,
baseball by any means.
yeah, not really the big fans of the Rays because of the article they put out yesterday of the Savali trade. But they came out with They gave out 5 trade scenarios that the Rays could possibly do before the trade deadline happens later on this month. So we'll go number 5, and we'll do a lightning round on this.
Okay.
We'll do Ahmed Rosario trade bait. I think we'll do agree or disagree. So I agree. Rosario could be a guy that moves. He's only signed a $1.5 million deal this year. Hasn't been in the lineup a lot, but when he's in, he's making contributions to the team. I think you could probably move him and get maybe a prospect or 2 out of him. Agree or disagree?
Completely agree. I think I think even if the Rays were again, we were talking before the show. If the Rays are in the playoffs, they're still making this. Like if they're slated to be in the playoffs at this point in the season, right? Let's say they were the third wildcard team. The Savale trade is a trade they're still making.
Yeah.
It's not because they're out of the playoff race or they're 3 games out. That's why they're saying, okay, we're good with trading Savale. No, I think no matter where they would have been, I think if they were a first place team and this is how the pitchers have performed or whatever, similarly, they're making that trade. I think Ahmed Rosario, outside of the scenario, if he was just killing it for like just a invaluable part of this team, outside of that, he's going to go. And so I completely agree. I mentioned this yesterday on our quick video about the Savali trade. I think Rosario goes at the deadline. I think that's what eventually paves the way. As long as Junior comes up healthy, he's supposed to be coming back here in the next week or 2.
Perfect timing.
From his quad strain. He gets some good ABs in AAA and looks healthy. I personally think that they could just do that swap, or you look at maybe like Curtis Mead coming up or something like that, because I know I believe he's doing a little bit better in AAA. So yeah, I absolutely think Rosario is going to make way for one of the guys in AAA. And again, that's not an indictment on the Rays season as much as it is, Rosario's been valuable for them this year. He's played a role, but like he's not coming back next year,
right,
on a multi-year deal or another 1-year deal. I can't imagine. So if he's not going to contribute after this season and you can get value for him now on a season that could be not one where you make the playoffs, then you have to go ahead and get value for him while you can. So, and he's been traded at the deadline before. He's been valuable to teams late in season in the playoffs. So like, and he's cheap. Like there's literally no reason to not trade him other than he just becomes one of the most valuable parts of your lineup. And that's just not going to be the case because he's just is what he is. He's a great bench player to have to come and start, maybe half the games in a week. And he's definitely filled his role well. It's just his value is better served elsewhere.
All right, our next one, I think we could both agree on Phil Maton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think if he continues, you know what, I know he's had a rough season.
Signed for 6.2, and then he's got the option for 7.2 for 2025.
Yeah, he's definitely not getting signed for the club, or the club option's not getting picked up for sure.
See, I'm in the middle of this because of just how we need relievers.
Yeah,
and I know he hasn't been that great, but if you were going to trade him, who are you popping in there to replace him?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I was looking at Phil Maton's splits. Hey, he's no hits off of him in July. 3 plate appearances. No, June. I feel like just watching the games, I feel like he's looked better as of late. But
it's the need. That's the only thing that troubles me the most about him is the need. Can we afford to trade him for a prospect, or maybe trade him?
Right.
But if they trade him, they need to get a guy they're going to plug in immediately into the bullpen.
Well, yeah, I think that man, yeah, his ERA was 6. Yeah, he's gone back and forth like April and March and April his ERA was 7.59 over 10 and 2/3, 11 and 1/3 in May with an ERA of 0.79. And then in June, 10 and a third innings, 6.97 ERA. So at this rate, July is going to be a great month.
I'm gonna say disagree.
Yeah, I'd say disagree too. I think if he continues to not perform well, I think that they would be comfortable getting rid of like if they actually fall out of the race,
He's gone. Yeah.
he's gone for sure because he's got notoriety. He's pitched well in the play, he's pitched well with the Astros in their playoff runs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they could offload him because they're not bringing him back next year on the
Right.
$7 million club option. So I'd like to think that if he performs better, I think he's just a guy they've committed so much money they're going to keep relying on.
Mm-hmm.
So I say disagree too. I feel like it's trending in the direction if they stay competitive, he's staying too.
Okay. Next one, and I'm gonna put my 100% disagree on this. Jason Adam. I disagree.
Yeah, disagree completely. I don't know. Again, I think that I don't know what his contract's at, but I know that he's on a 1-year arbitration deal. Yeah, disagree completely. I think it would take them like really falling out of things. Yeah, he's making 2.7 million this year.
Yeah, that's nothing.
He's been their most consistent reliever.
Yeah.
And I know since Fairbanks came back from the IL, he's been really, really strong. But Jason Adams been the guy that's been killing it. Yeah, he's got 2 more years of club. He's not a free agent until 2027. So, I mean, I think if they're willing to give a guy like Maton 6.5 mil or whatever it was, or 7 mil for next year in a club option, they can afford to pay Jason Adam next year, whatever it is, 3-something million, $3 to $4 million. Like if they want to remain, again, he's a guy that's valuable for them this year and next year and maybe the year after. Like that's not, if you plan to have a contending team next year, that's not a guy you just get rid of. Of course, with the caveat, if some team blows you away or something, then okay, you can think about it, but no, 100% disagree.
Okay, the next two we can go quick on. Let's do this next one's tricky for me, Zach Eflin, because his name has been brought up like a couple months ago with the Braves,
Mm-hmm.
and then now at this point in time, with me, I don't think they're going to let him go unless you get blown away by an offer. And I only say that because you kind of need him now in the rotation. You need him, especially if you're going to try and make a bump for the playoffs.
Yep.
Unless there's a team out there that's like, I'm going to blow you away with an offer to steal Zach Eflin away. Because I just think they need him. With the rotation that they have right now, they need him. And there's no way I don't think they're going to let, even though I know he's making a lot of money. And I think the only thing it depends on is how, and we spoke about this before, how and where they are at before the trade deadline. If they're totally out of it, there's no coming back. Yeah, he's going to be moved. But if they're staying right where they're at, like a couple games out, and they're hanging around, he's not going anywhere. Unless there's a huge offer. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah. My only concern with trading him is next year is I know he's making 18 mil. So, and it's guaranteed. It's not an option or anything. So he's making 18 mil regardless. If you got Shane back, you got Drew back, Jeffrey Springs back, Shane Baz, Pepio, Bradley, and Zach Eflin. What is that? 7 names?
Yeah.
I don't expect McClanahan and Rasmussen and maybe Springs. Like they're not just going to immediately go into like a huge workload.
You're going to have to ease them back in. Those 3 guys are going to be eased back into the whole rotation.
and I'm sure Bradley and Pepio, they're going to hit some innings highs this year, probably. So and then you have Zach Littell, technically, who would be under contract.
That's the one guy I think that might be moved would be Littell.
Yeah, I would agree
because of the value he holds. Like I think his value is more than Zach Eflin's.
I wouldn't be surprised because you need a guy. I think you need a guy that can eat some innings up next year. And if you get rid of Eflin, I don't know if you have a guy that you can say, okay, hey, in 2021 they went out and got like Rich Hill and Michael Waka. People were not thinking like these were going to be just incredible pitchers, but they were innings eaters, right? So Eflin would be that guy for you, which is really valuable to have in a rotation full of high ceiling guys that are you're expecting a lot from, because he can just kind of be your steady Eddie, and he's also not being looked at as like you got to be the ace. And we've talked about like if he's like your second, third, fourth guy in the rotation, that's a really great place for him and makes your rotation look really, really solid and much deeper. I tend to think that the Rays, just knowing how they operate or how I feel like they operate, I could see them trading him this year. I tend to agree, unless if they are, I think he gets traded. I think he gets traded either at the deadline or in the offseason. I think if it's in the offseason, it's because they make a run for the playoffs and they need him this year for that.
I'm going to go I'll say offseason he'll get traded.
Yeah, I think if they hang around this like borderline of 4 to 5 games, I could see them getting traded at the deadline, because I think a team that's actually contending in the playoffs, that's like making a run, that wants to boost their pitching staff, I think if you got a good catcher in return or something like that, like I think there's options that his price could go up and there could be a good trade opportunity there. And I wouldn't hate it. I would be fine, because I think they could go out and get a guy that could come in, be more of a veteran presence, innings guy for a lot cheaper next year in the offseason, while getting all of the pitching back. But I agree. I think a guy like Zach Littell potentially could be on his way out before Zach Eflin. But don't trade Eflin just to trade him. I think it all depends on team performance right now.
Last one, the dog, Brandon Lau.
I agree. I think they should trade him, but I don't know. I mean, again, it's hard because
of where they're at. It's hard because of where they're at right now.
Yeah, if they're contending and they're in the playoff hunt, he's not going anywhere, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I think all the guys that we talked about before, like Yandy and Randy and Brandon Lau, like if they were at the point where they were a few weeks ago or like a month ago, where it just seemed like they weren't getting any better and they were under 500, I'd say those guys would be entertained in a lot of trade scenarios. But I think where they're at right now, it just kind of depends on where they're at that deadline. Right. It's because if they're hanging around, he's staying put. If somebody comes in and said, "Hey, we'll come in, we'll give you a great catching prospect that's AAA ready to go, probably in the next year or two," I'd say pull the trigger on it. But I just where they're at right now, they're in a. It's almost like in a position where I do want them to be in, but I don't want them to be in because hey, they're hanging around, but they are probably not going to make any kind of like huge trades that are going to shock anybody. You know what I mean? So if it was me a couple weeks, like I think I said like maybe a month ago, like, yes, get rid of him. Like, get rid of him. We don't need him anymore. But now, since they're kind of like hanging around, he's probably not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, he makes $10.5 million on a club option next year, and then $11.5 million the year after that.
Off season, probably he'll be moved.
Yeah, $8.75 million to this year. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you think someone would want to take him for $10.5 million?
I don't know, man.
So I don't know if it's a guarantee. I mean, it's a $1 million buyout. So which is I don't know. I would tend to think that like with his injury history, he really has had one season that he's giving you a full year of production, and it was a great season. I mean, he hit almost 40. It was like 39, 99, 39 homers, 99 RBIs. I tend to feel like that he's not going to be somebody you
So
keep
high on.
or that you keep next year.
Yeah.
Because with Stu's comments earlier in the season about being uncomfortable with the payroll, I feel like they're going to definitely decrease payroll. And if they end up keeping somebody like Zach Eflin, guys like Yandy Diaz, which I would expect they do, because if they want to contend next year, these are, especially a guy like Yandy, but like Eflin's contract goes up to 18 mil. Yandy makes, I mean, these guys are going to be making, it goes from 8 million to 10 million. Like, there's going to be salary increases elsewhere, and then God forbid you're still paying Wander Franco, his salary jumps up big time next year too. So like, I think a guy like Brandon Lau, that's a guy that could say, okay, he's making 10.5 mil. We don't, that's a guy we can take out of the equation to save some money, because frankly, you have Richie Palacios, who can play second well, and he's, I think, been a great addition to the team, and he's much cheaper. You have Jonathan Ronda, who still needs to get regular at bats, at some point, you would think. So you have other guys, and not to mention, of course, guys like Junior Caminero, Curtis Mead, eventually Carson Williams. Like, you're going to have other infield guys coming up that, you're going to need to get some time for, starting this year and then into next year, with like guys like Carson Williams. So, yeah, if they traded Brandon Lau this year, I like in the season, I wouldn't, it wouldn't shock me. I still think if they're contending, I think they just are so high on him and what he does for the lineup that if he's still healthy, I think that they're going to keep him.
I don't think there's a market for him right now.
What are any of these guys? I mean, what's the guy, like, what's the player on the team that if they traded at the deadline, you would say, okay, they're like actually selling? Because we agree that the Savale trade, and even if they traded somebody like Zach Littell, I wouldn't tell you that they're trading, they're selling.
I would say the one player, it would probably be Yandy.
Okay, so
because of the way he's turned it around, he's playing really good baseball. He's hitting good.
Yeah.
That would be the guy that signals to me, okay, they're selling. Because other than that, it's
like if they trade. So yeah, I agree. If they traded Yandy, I think that would be
that's
okay,
the one guy that's the guy that comes to mind. If they traded Randy, I wouldn't be shocked about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked. I think if they trade one of Randy or Yandy, it would be okay. This is depending on what's happening after the fact, like who's coming up to take that spot. That would be kind of the first indication that they're like, okay, they might try to sell you on staying competitive this year, but like they're definitely playing the longer game. Yeah. So I think I know we went through a bunch of names. I think guys that weren't mentioned there that could be on the move are Zach Littell, and Sean Armstrong potentially. I know he's not pitched well lately. I think Sean Armstrong is also potentially playing his way into being DFA'd at some point for a guy like Manny Rodriguez or something like that from AAA, because he's just looked terrible. And so I think those are two names that you could see, because Sean's making almost $3 million this year in arbitration. I think that they'll move on from him at some point, whether in the offseason or this deadline. So I think those are two names that very possibly could be on the move, that they did not list in that article, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think Littell would be the number one guy right now. It's probably on the market that they're gonna get calls about.
Yeah. What a win for the Rays. Like, they got him for nothing off waivers last year. And if they traded him and got actual value back for him, I mean, just
that's the guy to me is you can get the most value out of him.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially.
All right, we'll end the show with the series wrap up with the Rays Royals series today. The rubber match is slated later on this. I think it's later on this afternoon, correct, or something tonight?
Yeah, 8 o'clock.
Right when the fireworks will be booming and going across the skies of every neighborhood in America. Thoughts on tonight's game? Kind of a disappointing game last night with a 4-2 loss against the Royals, but hopefully they can take and have another series win.
Yeah, I mean, I never like playing in Kansas City. It always feels uphill battle. No matter how good the Rays are.
I hate the 8 o'clock starts. By the way,
Yeah, it's tough. Well, you got another one tomorrow night too.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that we did luck out with Kansas City as far as our pitching matchups go. We didn't get their two top pitchers, so we're getting Alec Marsh tonight. The Rays again. Last night felt kind of similar to what we experienced a lot in the first half. Anemic offense or getting out ahead early and then just not doing much from there. The pitching and bullpen kind of just let you down with some giving up some timely hits in the wrong way. Yesterday felt like a winnable game for them not to come out on top. It wasn't the most frustrating loss I've seen this year for sure, but definitely, we feel like you had a chance to maybe go ahead and get the series win last night. That would have made today feel a lot less pressure filled. I think, to be honest, like I hate to put it all in this one game, but like I think today's a must win game for them. Like, because you go into a Texas series over the weekend, that's going to be a tough one to win. So I think it could swing one way or the other here over the weekend where, okay, they lose tonight. You're looking at maybe losing 2 or 3 against Texas. And now all of a sudden you're,
back at home.
Five,
yeah, for a 6-game stretch against the Yankees in the
yeah, and you're maybe like with the Royals being that last wild card team, you're looking at maybe 5-6 games out at that point, like, and that's a lot bleaker of a image than being 3 out or something like that.
Well, that's if that happens, then that's when you're going to start hearing calls about guys.
Yeah, and you're going to start hearing it, and again, we said it before. Trading Savale is not them waving the white flag. Please do not.
Yeah, national media. You guys don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, it is not
maybe
waving the white
do your
flag.
research before putting out our stupid ass articles.
He's been the worst pitcher.
We're going to end the show on that. National media, do your research before putting out stupid ass articles. And then when you're on your podcast talking about, the Rays are being sellers, they're done for the year. You guys have no idea. You have no idea what's going on with this team by them just selling one.
Absolutely. Did they lose that Savale trade? Absolutely, they did. But
for the men's
whole, getting Savale in the first place, like that did not turn out well for them. There's no denying that. But yeah, this is not them waving the white flag on the season.
No.
So anyway, I feel like they've got the upper hand in tonight's pitching matchup. So that makes me feel good. Eflin,
say Eflin goes 6, Rays win 4-2.
Yeah, I feel like I got a feeling that Josh Lowe is going to hit a homer tonight. I felt it last night, and he didn't come through for me, and so I think I'm just carrying it over to today.
I got a Siri home run.
Siri home run, yeah, man, he's been playing great. He's been playing so good. Actually,
that's a good prop bet.
He's been so good for them, and honestly, having him take walks, hit home runs, just generally playing well in all facets of the game, like it makes the lineup so much better. Because we already have a black hole in Alex Jackson at the moment, and so
also too when he's playing well, he's very entertaining.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that about him because he's so entertaining, especially when he hits home runs with his bat flips. It's entertaining, man. And that's what I like to see.
Yep. So I hope they get the win tonight. I would love to go into the weekend with another series win and keep that moving. Because I actually think, I think going again, it's baseball. Anything can happen. And you look at the next 3 series to wrap up the first half, and they could easily lose all 3. They've yet to win a series against the Yankees. The Guardians, I think, do they have the best record in the American League? I thought that was the case. No, not anymore. No. They're top in their division, one of the best teams all year. Like they could easily lose the next 3 series after this one. But I also think that they keep the momentum going. They could really end this first half on a strong note. I think the matchup set up well for them against the Yankees. And so looking ahead, I just think tonight could be a great table setter for the last push here into the first half. Yeah, it's one game against the Royals. I'm not trying to make it like a season defining game, but it's just I feel like it's just it could set the table for a strong finish to the end of the first half. So I hope that they play well tonight. They didn't use any of their strong bullpen guys last night, so I think they set up well.
I say he goes 6. So we'll see. So all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining up to a special Rays Rewind here on the 4th of July. Eat well, swim well. Make sure you light your fireworks off safely. Don't put them in your hand and just do all kinds of crazy stuff. But enjoy the fireworks tonight. Hopefully, Rays will pull out a win and another series win against the Royals. We'll see you guys next time on the Rays Rewind podcast, the sickest Tampa Bay Rays podcast on the Sick Media Network. For myself and Drew, we'll see you guys later. Happy 4th of July.
See you.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Rays Rewind with Bushman and Drew on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.